My next guest is Michiel de Smedt from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. He leads the foundation's finance program aiming to scale finance for the circular economy. Michiel, can you start us off with a few words on who or what is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and how does the foundation work?
Yeah, happy to do so. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Ellen MacArthur was a professional yacht woman, and she broke back in 2005 the world record solo sailing around the globe. So imagine being on a boat in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The people closest to you are the ones in the International Space Station, and if something goes wrong, it takes 4 to 5 days before help can reach you. So obviously in that situation, the boat and all you've got on your boat is all you have. There's nothing more. All the food, all the resources are with you on that boat. Now, take that concept and think about what it means from a global economy point of view. That's exactly what Ellen MacArthur did when she retired from professional sailing. She looked at our production and consumption systems through material lens. And she founded a foundation, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, in order to look into that concept and develop that concept. The foundation is a charity, and we work together with businesses, policymakers, and academics to develop and accelerate the transition towards a circular economy. We work together with, in our network, over 300 businesses across the economy in sectors such as plastics, textiles, and food, and we collaborate with them in order to design better solutions. From a financial services point of view, we're working together with BlackRock and Intesa Sanpaolo, which are our two strategic partners of the foundation.
Those are very ambitious goals. We are hearing about the circular economy often nowadays from the WEF, from the European Union, among others. But how do you define at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, how do you find the circular economy?
Well, in order to define the circular economy, let's start with a classic example of our linear economy, the humble light bulb. Roughly a century ago, light bulb manufacturers had become so good at manufacturing light bulbs that they started worrying that people would never have to buy new ones. And indeed, even nowadays, we have working light bulbs that are over a century old. So what was their response back in the days? They came together and decided to, on purpose, limit lamp life. So basically, they designed waste into their business model. And that's exactly what we're currently seeing in our current economy. It's about taking resources, making something out of it, and after a shorter or longer use term, wasting it, throwing it away. It's a take, make, waste system. And you can represent it as a line, hence a linear economy. And whichever industry you look into, such an extractive model comes with severe shortcomings. Billions of dollars are being wasted in raw materials and in energy, and in the utilized assets and disposal costs. So that's the economic side. But next to those economic drawbacks or value being lost, there's also severe impact from an environmental point of view. Think about many of the global challenges that we're facing: climate change, biodiversity loss, plastic pollution. Now, there are signs that we are moving in the right direction. Take one of those leading light bulb manufacturers, Philips Lighting, nowadays known as Signify. In Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, they are offering a pay-per-lux intelligent lighting system. So they're no longer selling the fixtures and the light bulbs, they're actually offering the light itself. So the airport is paying for the light emitted by the fixtures rather than the installations themselves. Philips, or in this case Signify, will remain owner of those installations and is responsible for the durability, for the performance, and ultimately for the reuse and recycling of those fixtures. And that really changed the dynamics. It changes the incentive system. So in hindsight, that might have seemed logical, but it implied a fundamental redesign of their product and services. And it's a great example of the circular economy, of a circular business model. The circular economy is a system solution framework that tackles some of those most pressing global challenges, as said, climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution. It's based, in a nutshell, on 3 principles driven by design. It's about eliminating waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. It's based increasingly on renewable energy and materials, and it is distributed and inclusive by design. As we can see from the light as a service example that I just gave, it really is about redesigning our systems, our products, our services. It's about rethinking business models.
Can you give a further example of this transition into the circular economy, like you saw at with the light bulbs?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's an important question because this is not just a theoretical model. We see more and more companies adopting circular economy principles to create value. We ourselves, as a foundation, are working together with some of the largest brands on this globe, as well as emerging innovators, all looking into the circular economy to create value. Let me give you a few quick examples. First of all, there's Renault, the car manufacturer. They are offering remanufactured spare parts and components with as new warranty to their customers, but with prices which are 30 to 50% lower. So this is really a strong economic rationale. And to put it in the words of their former COO, he claimed that their plant, their remanufacturing plant close to Paris, was one of their most profitable plants they have. So there's a strong business case there. That's Renault. Let's take another example of Danone, for example. They are investing in regenerative agriculture. Doing so, they are not only strengthening their supply chain and increasing its resilience, they're also responding to what we see an increasing demand coming from customers to know where their food comes from and how it has been grown. And Danone actually puts targets against it. For example, they committed to sourcing 100% of their ingredients sourced in France by 2025 as produced through regenerative agriculture. So that's a second example. And then there's HP. HP used to sell just printers. Now they're also selling printer as a service, printing as a service subscription models. You're no longer, as a customer, no longer buying the printer, you're just paying for the printouts. And in this way, HP not only develops and taps into a new market, at the same time, from an operational point of view, they facilitate closed-loop recycling of the cartridges. So these are three big companies that, as individual companies, are adopting circular economy principles. Now, if we take a step back and look at entire industries, we're seeing how the concept is changing and transforming entire sectors. Look, for example, at fashion. Before the end of this decade, second-hand fashion resale is expected to be bigger than fast fashion. And we can give more examples coming from plastics, as said, fashion, food, where we see that the circular economy has started transforming industries. Individual companies are adopting the principles to reduce their cost, to increase revenues and manage risks. And at the same time, entire industries are shifting. And with that, we see also the financing opportunities emerging. To give one example, I'm quite sure we'll go into detail, going back to that fashion and how that fashion industry is changing. Just in the past a few weeks, we saw two companies focusing on online fashion resale, namely Poshmark and Threaded, going public in the past few weeks alone. So that we see those bright spots, we see those elements about how that circular economy thinking is changing those industries.
Now we're talking to investors in this event, so financing the circular economy, the circularity and the transformation is very important, and also what the circular economy mean for the financial sector.
Yes, definitely. So we've published a report towards the end of last year on financing the circular economy. I think one of the key insights is how that circular economy theme offers a massive opportunity to investors, to the finance sector more broadly, and for two broad reasons. First of all, it will help address or achieve goals set linked to climate change and other environmental, social governance issues. And secondly, it's a source of new and better growth. Let me unpack this a little bit. First of all, climate change. We see an increase in demand for solutions and products that are responding to climate change, and rightly so, whether that's coming because of the fact that asset owners are much more interested in that topic, or whether it's because of stricter regulation, or whether it's because of pledges made by financial institutions themselves. And if you now think about addressing climate change, very often the starting point is the energy transition. We calculated that if you look at global greenhouse gas emissions, 55% of those emissions can be addressed through the energy transition. So here we're talking about shifting towards renewable energy sources and energy efficiency. Now, if you also want to tackle the remaining 45%, you'll have to look into how we grow and consume our food and how we produce and use our products. So it really is about production and consumption systems. And that's exactly where the circular economy comes into play. Let me give you an example. If you circulate products rather than produce products, new products from scratch, you'll reduce energy demand because you'll keep the energy that went into making those products within the economy. Or another example could come from farming and agriculture. By adopting circular economy principles through regenerative agriculture, you can actually sequester carbon in the soil rather than emit it. So that's climate change. I won't go too deep into other ESG challenges, but to give you one example, there's plastics and plastic pollution, obviously also very high on the agenda. In a circular economy for plastics, we first of all eliminate unnecessary or problematic plastic packaging. Secondly, we innovate such that the plastics that we do need actually can be designed to be reusable, recyclable, compostable. And then finally, we circulate the plastics within our economy to ensure they stay out of the environment. So that's the first element of this massive opportunity to the finance sector. Now, moving towards the second bit, and I already touched upon this, the circular economy has a very strong economic rationale. It's about understanding or going to the core of our economic activities and redesigning them for value creation in the long run. It's about transforming entire industries. So back in the days in 2016, when we developed a report on the circular economy for plastics together with McKinsey and the World Economic Forum, that topic wasn't very high on the agenda. So we calculated in our report that if nothing happens in a business as usual scenario, by 2050, there could be more plastics than fish in our oceans by weight. And since then, we really saw the topic climb on the agenda. What we see now is that consumers are very much aware about the issues, the environmental problem with plastic packaging, and are demanding change from big brands. For example, Nestlé responded to this, committed 1.5 billion Swiss francs to tackling plastic and plastic packaging issues. We see stricter regulation. We've seen the EU plastic strategy. We've seen the Single-Use Plastics Directive. Or in China, we saw the National Sword Policy. And we see business innovation. Companies indeed stepping up, leading the way, testing new delivery models, testing new design. So in the matter of just a few years, the industry dynamics, the setup has been disrupted and is changing as we speak. So obviously, in order to identify the winners of tomorrow, it's important to have the right framework. And the circular economy framework, a circular economy theme, can help you identify those aspects that will be relevant. So in essence, it really is about rethinking and redesigning the core of economic activities to ensure that it will benefit business, people, and the planet.
Coming back to the financial sector, the financial services firms really taking note of this, of this opportunity coming out of the circular economy.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, these are very exciting times, and I'll share a few examples here. What we see is that the circular economy market is taking off with very rapid growth in just the past 18, 24, 36 months. Let us start with public equity funds. A few years ago, there was no public equity fund dedicated to the circular economy. Now we've got over 13 public equity funds solely or partially dedicated to the circular economy theme, being launched by some of the world's largest providers, including BlackRock, Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, Lombard Odier, Decalia, amongst many more. And what we see is that since early 2020, the start of 2020, the assets managed through these funds have grown 20-fold, up to nearly $7 billion nowadays. So that's one example of steep growth. Now let's move to its fixed income. Again, 2 years ago, there was no activity. What we see now is that we've got over 30 corporate and sovereign bonds to finance circular economy activities, involving some of the world's largest companies. There's Alphabet, BASF, Orange, PepsiCo, Philips, with the help of some of the world's leading banks in order to issue those bonds. To give a recent example, H&M just a few weeks ago issued a $500 million sustainability-linked bond with a pricing mechanism that's linked to its use of recycled material. So you see that theme, you see those indicators slowly but steadily being more visible through financial instruments. Now, if you move away from capital markets, if you look at private market funds, bank lending, project finance, insurance, the topic of a circular economy and the way it is being used is becoming increasingly important. To give two short examples, first of all, there's a 6 billion euros credit facility by Intesa Sanpaolo in order to support circular activities. And secondly, a few weeks ago, AB InBev, the brewer, linked the terms of its $10 billion credit facility to the use of recycled content in its primary packaging. Again, we see those indicators, we see the topic, the theme climbing on the agenda and actually fueling new products. So that's very encouraging to see.
And it's very exciting also to hear some Swiss names in there. What's next in bringing forward this agenda?
Well, obviously the momentum started building. We see that growth, we see that emerging. The first proof of evidence is out there. Now it's a matter of scaling it and then seizing the full opportunity. And in order for that to happen, well, first of all, there's a role and an opportunity for the finance sector. There it's about replicating and scaling existing instruments. It's about formalizing the concept of a circular economy, ensuring it gets integrated in tools and frameworks. Think about the credit approval process. It's about integration into decision-making, into business strategies, into capabilities. And it's also about innovating, understanding how we can still close some of the financing gaps out there. Think about circularity-linked loans or bank lending for harder to finance circular business models. And from our point of view, for this first category, we are working together with our partners on different topics. First of all, we're working together with BlackRock on their Circular Economy Public Equity Fund. And we're also working together with Intesa Sanpaolo and Bocconi University on the development of a paper that links that de-risking effect of the circular economy with the circular economy activities and instruments. So that's one piece in order to scale the circular economy and seize its opportunities. Now, secondly, governments and financial regulators have an important role to play. They can set the direction. They can provide incentives, such as fiscal treatment, for example, for remanufacturing. They can invest directly into infrastructure, into long-term innovation, into circular activities. And they can improve transparency. And you already mentioned the EU taxonomy, which is obviously an important instrument to create a common language to instill trust. From our point of view, we are, as you mentioned, member of the EU Platform on Sustainable Finance, and in that capacity, we're contributing to the taxonomy. The circular economy is one of the 6 environmental objectives of this taxonomy. That's great to see, very encouraging to see. It will also help to integrate the concept of a circular economy into financing activities. Then there's an element for blended finance to de-risk some of the investments that we see out there, to attract private capital, but also understand how we should be funding some harder to finance activities. Think about plastic packaging collection systems, where it's not only a one-off in terms of the infrastructure, but where you also have to think about the operational expenses going forward. And then finally, all of this, and that's very much in line with what we are seeing out there, all of this has to be underpinned by better data. It's about scaling dedicated circularity measurement tools, such as the one developed by the foundation. It's called Circalytics. You can find it on our website. It's freely available. And understand how we then can integrate insights coming from that data into leading disclosure frameworks and reporting frameworks. And we see obviously the trend towards harmonization. From our point of view, we really want to scale Circalytics, bring more valuable data to the finance sector, and also help those leading initiatives integrate the circular economy to achieve common objectives. So I think in a nutshell, we see both a role to play, but also an opportunity to seize for many of those different stakeholders. From a foundation point of view, we are already involved with several stakeholders from those categories and will continue to do so. But all in all, it's an exciting time. As said, we see steep growth across the finance sector, and it's very encouraging to see new products being launched almost every day, to be a bit boldly. And well, we look forward to the next few months and years and see how this space will be developing.